A woman with dark hair and glasses wonders when her life became so tangled, questioning if it was when she was born an orphan or when her job betrayed her. Her memories flash to being stabbed as she recalls her final wish was to be reincarnated as a noble child, just before a voice urges her to wake up. In a lavish bedroom, a sick child with light purple hair feels her body burning with fever as her panicked maids rush to call a doctor. Someone gently takes the sick child's hand, promising her that they are there. A crying maid named Mari urges the child to hold on, but in the background, a man angrily dismisses the situation. The man, identified as Lord Havnik, coldly tells the servants to deal with it themselves as the now infant girl weakly opens her eyes. Havnik clenches his jaw, annoyed by the frustrating situation and the child's voice. Staring down at the sick child, Havnik cruelly tells her to die properly, calling her an irritating brat as she realizes she's been reborn into her killer's family. The scene brightens to a sunlit room as someone calls out for the miss. The voice calls her name, Miss Erin, and the little girl with light purple hair turns around. Mari tells a now healthy Erin that she shouldn't be moving yet because they were worried, but Erin insists she's no longer in pain. Wah! Erin happily jumps and dances around to prove she's fine, causing Mari to cry out in surprise as her soul flies out of her body. Mari gently touches Erin's face, glad that she seems to be feeling better. Picking the child up, Mari tells her she must rest for the day to ensure her fever doesn't return. Cradled in Mari's arms, Erin worries that she could be kicked out of the Brano family if she gets sick again, reluctantly agreeing with the maid. The ornate crest of the Brano ducal family is displayed. Looking at the grand estate, Erin's internal voice identifies it as her former workplace and the origin of all of Havnik's schemes. As Mari carries her through the hall, Erin notes that the portrait of the late Duke is still hanging, which surprises her. She realizes she has returned to the time she first joined the family, showing a portrait of the late Duke, Raphael Brano, and his 3 sons. Erin recalls that Raphael's 3 sons were all problematic in their own ways, leaving Havnik as the only viable successor. She remembers that once Havnik was certain to inherit the title, he began secretly committing all kinds of atrocities. All the cleanup for Havnik's crimes was dumped on her, his loyal secretary, yet after all her hard work, he had her killed. During her 10 years of service, she witnessed countless people die at Havnik's command. As a talented individual sponsored by the Brano family, she never imagined she would meet the same fate. She believed that her devotion would eventually be rewarded and worked herself to the bone for the family. Looking at her reflection, she scoffs at the thought of her value, realizing she was just a disposable pawn from a commoner background. She remembers her first vacation in 10 years at a tranquil seaside spot, a place so remote that no one would hear her cries for help. On a sandy beach, a man with a sword approached her as she begged for her life. But no one showed her pity, and she met a lonely death. She died alone, without friends, family, or a home, feeling only a creeping cold as she bled out. Back in the present, the little girl with purple hair speaks up, addressing the maid. Mari smiles, telling Erin she is relieved that she recovered her strength so quickly. With a look of sincere devotion, Mari confesses that she spent the entire previous night praying that Erin would no longer be sick. Mari humbly admits she doesn't know if her prayers worked, but her kindness brings tears to Erin's eyes as she whispers the maid's name. Offering snacks, Mari asks if Erin would like biscuits or raspberries, but the familiar food gives Erin a strange feeling. A sudden, sharp realization dawns on Erin's face. She recalls that the snacks offered are the exact same menu given to the Brano household servants after their meals. Erin pushes away from Mari, politely declining the food and saying she doesn't feel like eating, which surprises the maid. Mari kindly agrees, saying she's stocked up for later, while Erin realizes the maid is taking care of her with her own snacks. As Mari carries her away, Erin's inner voice notes that the rumors about the family's poor treatment of her were true. A narration introduces the girl, floating amidst blue roses, as Erin Brano, the only daughter of Colony Brano. It's explained that her father, Colony, had a poor relationship with the family after marrying a commoner, causing Erin to be ostracized. After her parents died, Erin was brought to the ducal estate, but her only companion is her maid, Mari. A chibi illustration shows her poor treatment, being housed in a storage closet and eating the maid's snacks. Once she's alone in her room, Erin sits up, confirming that Mari is gone. Her thoughts turn to a more pressing matter. She recalls Havnik's cruel voice calling her an annoying little brat while she was sick with a fever, and her eyes fill with fear. Erin's past self remembers that Erin was adopted by Havnik the same year she started working there, but the child had already died in an accident upon her arrival. Though the official story was that Erin died in a fall, none of Havnik's servants believed it. They knew he threw a tantrum when his niece was dying, and had only adopted her for appearances, seeing the child as a nuisance. Tossing in her sleep, Erin's inner voice concludes that it was obvious. Havnik got rid of the original Erin. Submerged in a dark sea, she fears that she will end up being killed by him again, just as she was in her past life. Back in her room, a determined Erin believes there must be a reason she was reincarnated as Erin Brano, even as she struggles to write. With a resolute expression, she acknowledges that this life won't be easy either. She clenches her fist, her eyes burning with determination for the path ahead. Now dressed and carrying a bag, Erin walks through the estate, thinking she knows where to find what she's looking for. She arrives at a vast, sun-drenched library filled with books from floor to ceiling. Looking around the empty library, she internally states the reason she came here. To execute the plan she carefully crafted, she realizes she needs some knowledge of magic science. The pages of a book flip open, revealing intricate magical diagrams in flowing script. Ornate magical staves are displayed, shimmering with power. A narration explains that magic scientists created many tools that improved everyday life through their research. A magnificent city with towering spires stands as a testament to the power of magic science. However, magical tools required scarce magic stones, making research so costly that only the wealthy could afford to study it. Erin struggles under the weight of several heavy books, noting that as a recognized noble family, the Brano family doesn't have to worry about such costs. Hurrying through the library, she thinks that her best chance of being adopted is to appeal to someone's interest in magic science. Peeking from behind a bookshelf, she stops in surprise at what she sees. She stares at a table buried under mountains of papers and books, wondering what it's all about. Looking closer at the documents, she recognizes terms like magic science system and united spells amidst the diagrams. Holding up a scroll, she realizes that all of these are research materials related to magic science. A cute, cat-eared version of her imagines herself authoritatively shouting, "Move aside," as she pushes through the documents. Her fantasy is cut short by a sudden realization as she looks up and whispers, "It's Jeffrey." An introduction panel identifies the man as Jeffrey Brano, the third son of the Duke, and an eccentric researcher known as the Mad Magic Scientist. The narration explains that Jeffrey is a recluse who is completely immersed in his solitary research, and Erin's plan is to use magic science cheese to attract his interest. A comedic panel illustrates his eccentric nature as a crazed version of him is attacked by a monstrous creature. Standing before the real Jeffrey, Erin offers a nervous greeting. He immediately barks at her to put down what she's holding, causing her to gasp in panic. Flustered, she tries to apologize but accidentally tosses the book and papers into the air. He coldly tells her to get lost, and she meekly agrees, turning to leave. She walks away dejectedly as Jeffrey returns to his cluttered desk, lost in thought. Back in her room, Erin despairs, realizing she's doomed for touching Jeffrey's things, especially his research log. Wah! She slams her hands on a book, lamenting that her plan to get adopted by appealing to his interest in future technology has failed miserably. Peeking over the top of a book, her expression grows serious as she thinks. She recalls the document he was writing, remembering it was filled with basic numbers and symbols. In his study, Jeffrey remembers the formula from the log she dropped, recognizing it as Elfro's magic calculation formula. A complex magical formula is displayed over an intricate background seal. A diagram shows a scale balancing a small magic stone against a much larger ring, illustrating the formula's efficiency. The narration explains that Elfro's discovery allowed for the creation of magical tools, using only a very small amount of magic stones. However, the formula was so complex that it took a long time to commercialize. Erin reads through a thick book with intense focus. The story reveals that after Havnik became the successor, he ruined the family's many businesses, but the family's wealth was maintained thanks to Elfro. She recalls her past life as a secretary, when Havnik proudly took credit for the discovery that greatly benefited the Brano family, and she mentally fantasizes about killing him. A shocking thought dawns on her as she sits alone in the library. Could Havnik have stolen Jeffrey's research results? Gritting her teeth in frustration, she burns with the desire to tell Jeffrey his formula is a groundbreaking invention that he cannot give to Havnik, but she slumps in resignation, figuring that the research-obsessed Jeffrey probably doesn't care, or he would have fought for it in her past life. Lost in thought, Jeffrey clicks his tongue in frustration as Aaron secretly watches from behind a chair. He runs a hand through his hair in exasperation, muttering, "Damn, this isn't it, Pat." Suddenly, he tosses a piece of paper over his shoulder, and Aaron wonders what's making him act that way. The crumpled research paper flutters through the air and lands directly in front of her feet. She stares down at the paper, wondering if he's having trouble with the formula. A man with wavy blue hair and a monocle hesitates in his study, looking uncertain. A small girl with light purple hair approaches the man at his desk, apologizing for interrupting his work. The purple-haired girl tries to hand him a document, insisting she has something important to tell him. He continues writing, ignoring the girl who stands by his desk, waiting silently. Now visibly annoyed, the blue-haired man glances up from his work with a frustrated expression. He finally turns to the purple-haired girl, pointing his pen at her sleeve while she looks down in surprise. With a loud thud, he slams his fist on the desk, angrily demanding to know what nonsense she's talking about as she watches. Terrified, the girl stares back, shocked and confused by his sudden anger. She frantically thinks to herself, insisting she only wanted to help by pointing out that his calculation formula is wrong. Finding her courage, the little girl defiantly shouts that his formula is incorrect in 3 different places. Thwack! Startled by her sudden outburst and the kick to his chair, the man asks what has gotten into her. The scene shifts to a grand mansion under a bright, sunny sky. Back in her room, the distraught girl furiously punches her pillow. Lying in bed, she laments that she's ruined her chances of being adopted and now wonders what to do. She sits up with renewed resolve, deciding that the only thing she can do now is offer a sincere apology. Determined to make amends, she first decides to borrow a book from the library and rushes towards the door. Opening the door, she stops in her tracks, looking up in shock at the person standing before her. The blue-haired man, Jeffrey, looms in the doorway with an unnerving intensity, causing her to call out his name in alarm. Jeffrey glares down at the terrified girl, who flinches away from his accusing gaze. With a sudden shift in demeanor, the girl cheekily presents the corrected document to a stunned Jeffrey. Jeffrey stares at the paper in utter disbelief, his glasses askew as he points to her numerous corrections. The document is covered in red ink, with entire sections of the formula crossed out and rewritten. Kneeling to her level, Jeffrey carefully examines the corrected research paper as she waits anxiously. A moment of fiery intensity passes. Still kneeling, Jeffrey points to the corrected paper and asks if she is absolutely sure her changes are correct. The girl looks up, surprised by his question, and asks what he means. As he holds the paper, Jeffrey thinks to himself that there's no way she came to him just to find out if it was right. The girl tearfully confirms that the parts she marked are wrong, and Jeffrey says with relief that he knew it. Jeffrey adjusts his monocle and leans closer, asking her to explain the reason for the errors. He silently wonders how long she has been spying on his research, leaving the girl utterly baffled by the accusation. She firmly denies his unspoken accusation, insisting she only read it yesterday, but he clearly doesn't believe her. Jeffrey dismisses her claim, stating his research is far too complex to be understood by merely skimming it. The girl proudly declares she is good at math, which surprises Jeffrey, who then questions if she even understands equations. He further questions her knowledge of the formula's complicated equations, but she confidently retorts that they all boil down to simple addition and subtraction. Jeffrey is consumed with doubt, so the girl boldly challenges him to test her knowledge. Intrigued, Jeffrey thoughtfully considers her proposal for a test. He agrees, sitting across from her at his desk as he prepares to examine her skills. Despite her confidence, the girl admits to herself that she doesn't know much about magic tech formulas, even with memories of a past life. After a moment of study, she points to a spot on the paper and declares it's the error, which he confirms is correct. The two work together diligently, poring over the stacks of documents on the table. Jeffrey adjusts his glasses, completely stunned by her abilities, and mutters that her talent is unbelievable. Numerous papers, all successfully corrected by the girl, are shown scattered across the table. He remarks on her astonishing calculation speed, and she puffs her cheeks, thinking he must be surprised. She recalls her past life as a gifted child prodigy, confident in her ability to handle numbers better than anyone. Jeffrey realizes he can delegate the calculations to her while he double-checks, allowing them to finally find the source of the errors. A dark, intense aura surrounds Jeffrey as he realizes her potential, thinking, as long as I have her. Jeffrey seems surprised by her answer, noting that she is still very young. He abruptly tells her to meet him in the afternoon, leaving her to wonder what he means. As he gathers the papers, he dismisses her question about the library and instructs her to come to his study room instead. Clutching a stack of papers, Jeffrey's sudden change in attitude leaves the purple-haired girl completely bewildered. She's stunned, realizing he sees their relationship as a business arrangement, with her as his assistant. He tells her he has something to discuss later and that he's going to get ready first, leaving her momentarily confused. He abruptly turns back, startling her as he remembers something important. He unexpectedly asks what she likes, and she can only respond with a confused, "Pardon?" He clarifies that he's asking about her favorite snacks, a question she quietly contemplates. Imagining a spread of expensive treats, she feels she can't ask for any as a mere freeloader. She quietly settles on a simple answer, biscuit, which seems to puzzle him. He questions if that's what she truly likes, and with clasped hands, she nervously confirms that it's tasty. Seeing her earnest reflection in his glasses, he looks down with a faint smile and agrees. As the scene changes to a grand set of doors, she feels a wave of nervousness wash over her. Now in a new outfit, she still can't quite believe he has officially made her his assistant. She spirals into a panic, imagining a grim future of being overworked and discarded, just like in her past life. A whimsical gauge visualizes her precarious mental state, teetering between life and death. Clenching her fists, she rallies her courage, determined to win Jeffrey's affection and secure her future. Hearing him call her in, she takes a breath and responds. She steps through the doorway into a breathtakingly large and ornate library. Her eyes widen in pure amazement at the magnificent sight before her. Surprised by how tidy the room is, she follows as he invites her further inside. In the grand room, a small, child-sized table and chair have been prepared. She realizes the little desk is meant for her, and Jeffrey explains it was arranged in a hurry. He instructs her to eat the snack on her desk while he finishes up some work, piquing her curiosity. A gleaming silver cloche sits on her table, hiding the promised snack. Lifting the lid, she finds the simple biscuit she had requested. Beneath the biscuits lies a stunning heart-shaped strawberry cream cake. The unexpected and beautiful cake leaves her completely flabbergasted. After hesitantly asking if it's really for her, she joyfully clasps her hands and thanks him for the meal. The first taste is incredible, and she can only think of how delicious it is. In a delightful fantasy, she floats through the air with personified strawberry and cream companions. Completely absorbed in the wonderful flavor, she continues to eat with gusto. Jeffrey watches her from his desk with a soft, pleased smile. Looking up at his gentle expression, she is suddenly struck by how handsome he is. Clang! Startled by her own thought, she drops her fork onto the plate. Embarrassed, she apologizes, explaining she's never had something so delicious before. He calmly advises her to wipe her mouth before speaking. Kaya! Seeing her cream-covered face reflected in the fork, she lets out a small shriek of embarrassment. She quickly wipes her mouth clean and offers a shy thank you. When he asks if she'd like more, she hastily insists she's full and satisfied. He kindly tells her there is plenty, so she doesn't need to eat in a hurry. Noticing a blush on his ears, she wonders why he seems embarrassed. She cautiously ventures a guess, asking if he made the cake himself, which earns a flustered ahem in response. His unspoken implication that he baked it because he's a picky eater leaves her absolutely speechless. In her mind, she now sees him as a divine being, presenting the heavenly cake himself. Feeling re-energized, she playfully puts the empty plate on her head, signaling she's ready to get to work. With a smile, Jeffrey rises and tells her to follow him for her instructions. He leads the way out of the study, the scene dissolving into a beautiful floral transition. A cute chibi version of the purple-haired girl gives a happy wave to the audience. He presents her with a book he authored, titled Everything About Magic Science. She gratefully takes the heavy tome from his hands with a polite thank you. Holding the large book, the purple-haired girl is told it's a special loan, as he doesn't just give books to anyone. Jeffrey explains that geniuses like us need sweets for brain function. Much to the girl's surprise, she thinks to herself that while she's grateful he called her a genius, something about the situation feels suspicious. She realizes with a jolt that the delicious cake was just fuel to get her to work. Sitting determinedly before a mountain of papers, holding a stack of books, Jeffrey instructs her to find all the mistakes within the massive pile of documents before her. His blunt confirmation leaves her aghast, as she realizes this is nothing short of child exploitation. Her spirits are instantly lifted when he promises to prepare chocolate and apple pies for her tomorrow. Motivated by the promise of more treats, she enthusiastically declares that she'll work hard. Clutching her new book, she hums happily as she skips down the corridor. In a cute fantasy, a cat-eared version of herself presents a gift to a chibi Jeffrey, who stands by a mad scientist warning sign. Imagining herself becoming his official, extra assistant, she concludes that her new situation is far better than she expected. Her imagination runs wild, picturing herself and Jeffrey working side by side as scientists in a laboratory. She fantasizes about being formally adopted into the Braunot family, held aloft by her presumed new father. The fantasy culminates in her living a life of absolute luxury, surrounded by an endless supply of exquisite desserts. As she skips along, confident in her plan, a dismissive voice from off-screen declares her idea is ridiculous. She stops in her tracks, annoyed as someone rudely calls out to the pissing baby. Turning around, she's confronted by two identical boys with purple hair, identified as Avalon and Bimel. Recognizing his Vinnic sons, she thinks they're as rude as ever and decides to ignore them, leaving the boys confused. The boys exchange puzzled glances, with one thinking that bothering Aaron seems to be a recurring issue. She recalls her past life as a secretary, comparing it to the strict hierarchy of the Braunot family. Realizing she's now on the level of a direct descendant, she feels no reason to be intimidated by them. Her confident little smile completely baffles the two boys, who wonder what's gotten into her. Assuming she's unwell, one of the boys is cut off as she calmly eats a biscuit and dismisses them, saying she's busy. Enraged by her casual dismissal, the older boy, Avalon, questions if she's gone insane. He aggressively pokes her on the forehead, demanding to know how she dares to speak to them that way. Despite his intimidation, she glares back defiantly as he continues to poke her forehead. She recalls overhearing their mother's constant worries about Bylum and Avalon's behavior. The boys angrily reject her words, accusing her of being smug now that she has leverage, while she inwardly sighs at their unreasonableness. As she walks away, she taunts them about being scared of something dirty, further enraging them. An angry shout stops her in her tracks, demanding to know who said she could leave. Avalon blocks her path, declaring the hallway is for outsiders, as he and his brother corner her. He taunts her, asking what she'll do now, and threatens that she won't be able to move another step. She warns them to move aside while she's still being nice, which shocks Bimel. Bimel whispers to his brother that she's acting strangely, but Avalon just glares silently. Avalon tries to threaten her with what the Duke will do, but she just hums nonchalantly, unimpressed by his warning. Startled by her lack of fear, she coolly asks how he dares to threaten her now. Whap! Losing his temper, Avalon grabs her hair and screams about her audacity as his brother watches in horror. He yanks her hair, calling her a cocky little small fry. He sneers, daring the spoiled brat to go ahead and tell her father. He cruelly tells her that their grandfather wouldn't even care if she disappeared, a statement that strikes a nerve. The cruel words trigger a distorted, painful memory of being told to be quiet because she's an orphan. Thwack! She retaliates, swinging her heavy book and striking Avalon directly in the face. Avalon cries out in pain as his younger brother shouts his name in shock and fear. Standing over him, she defiantly yells, "So what if I'm an orphan?" She lands another blow, screaming that she'd rather have no parents than ones like them, leaving Avalon with a bleeding forehead. She furiously turns on Bimel, repeatedly hitting him with her book as he yelps in pain. Horrified, Bimel urges his brother to leave, declaring that the outsider is completely crazy. Bimel screams his brother's name in terror as he sees Avalon's bleeding forehead. A furious shout of "Hey!" echoes from down the hall. As Avalon yanks her hair and demands to know how she dared to hit him, she struggles fiercely, telling him to let go. She slaps his hand away from her cheek as he furiously yells that she's dead now. As her book lies open on the floor, he threatens to have his father do the same thing to her. Bursting into his study, Bimel calls out to his father, a man with dark purple hair, who calmly acknowledges his son's arrival. The two boys stand before their father, demanding he punish the girl, with Bimel accusing her of hitting his brother. The father questions who "her" is, looking past his sons to see the bruised but defiant purple-haired girl. Recognizing her, the father glares and thinks, "It's you again!" as the girl flinches under his gaze. Avalon blatantly lies, claiming they only asked why she was in the main house before she insulted them and attacked him with her book, leaving the girl to think he's a liar. He adds a cruel jab, asking if she's trying to make it obvious that she grew up without parents. Pointing an accusatory finger, Avalon demands that his dad teach her a lesson. The father calmly places the letter he was reading onto his desk. Towering over the small girl, the man tells her to apologize to her older brothers and end the matter. Stunned, she thinks through their insults and aggression, wondering why she's the one who has to apologize, while the twin boys smirk victoriously. He presses her for a response, but she remains silent, trembling with indignation. He coldly tells her that someone like her should be quietly lying low. A threatening aura surrounds him as he grabs her chin and menacingly asks if she dares to ignore his words. With his face cloaked in shadow, he repeats his question, asking if she's seriously ignoring him. He grips her wrist tightly, demanding she apologize right now. As their eyes meet, she recognizes the cold, dismissive look in the man's eyes from her past life, identifying him as Harvenic. She understands his unspoken command: keep her mouth shut and don't cause trouble. Realizing he won't let go until she kneels, she considers surrendering to his demand. Just as she's about to give in, she glances hopefully over her shoulder. Jeffrey stands in the doorway, and she calls out his name in surprise. Her cheeks flush as she wonders why Jeffrey is there. She briefly hopes he's just passing by. Her hope fades as he walks directly toward her, and she realizes he's intervening. Jeffrey kneels beside her and gently pats her head in a comforting gesture. Harvenic angrily asks why Jeffrey is interfering, but Jeffrey ignores him, instead asking the girl if she's in pain and observing that no one seems seriously hurt. He gently touches a cut on her forehead, startling her with his concern. Enraged, Harvenic points at Avalon's injury, demanding Jeffrey look at the mess the bratty girl made. Harvenic rants about her audacity in hitting a legitimate Branagh child, questioning how she could attack her brother. Jeffrey looks up at Harvenic with a sharp, knowing smile, pointedly repeating the word, brother? Jeffrey stands to face Harvenic, whose aggressive posture falters for a moment. Harvenic dismisses the implication as nonsense, but Jeffrey coolly suggests that anyone curious can confirm the truth for themselves. After Harvenic calls him a brat, Jeffrey turns to the girl and tells her they're leaving. She quickly follows him, running to keep up as he leads her away from the confrontation. Back in the study, Jeffrey gently dabs her scraped cheek with a cotton ball, telling her to hold still. He softly asks if it hurts, and she quickly insists that she's fine. After telling her to be more careful, Jeffrey closes the first aid kit, and she meekly agrees. She internally panics, believing she's ruined her chances of adoption by making such a mess, and will only ever be seen as a useful assistant. As he latches a wooden box, Jeffrey reassures her that after this, those brothers won't bother her for a while, piquing her curiosity. Meanwhile, a defeated Avalon and Bimel wonder what they should do now. Jeffrey clarifies that he meant Avalon and Bimel, which seems to fluster the girl. He leans in closer, looking at her seriously, causing her to nervously flinch. Jeffrey states with authority that she is his assistant, and therefore, he is the one in charge of her. She meekly accepts his authority, promising not to mess up next time, as he prepares to say something more. She hesitantly accepts the book, looking up at him as she murmurs a soft, ah. Thanking him, she holds the book and feels a pang of loneliness, believing she's the only one not truly part of the Branagh family. She quickly insists she likes the book because it shows his trust in her, and he gently clarifies that he doesn't lend books to just anyone. Touched by his simple but meaningful gesture, she clutches the book to her chest. Jeffrey remains silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. As he says "I see," the scene transitions to a balcony at night, where a concerned voice calls out for the young miss. A maid with brown hair worriedly holds the girl's hands, asking about the injuries on her face and her disheveled clothes. Deciding it would be a disaster to tell the maid, Mari, about Harvenic and his sons, she resolves to keep quiet to avoid spreading rumors. She lies and says she just fell, but Mari is skeptical and worries Sir Jeffrey was involved, a misunderstanding the girl quickly corrects. Mari firmly holds her hands, earnestly asking her to promise to tell her everything, no matter what happens. As they walk down a hall, Mari insists that honesty is the only way she can help, and the girl reluctantly agrees. Despite her promise, she repeats her lie about tripping on the stairs, leaving Mari looking down in silent disappointment. Mari holds the bandaged girl's hands, their faces close as she tries to read the truth in her eyes. The girl understands Mari's suspicion, knowing her recent change in behavior is noticeable. She reflects that since waking up in this new body, she's only focused on survival, and never considered the feelings of the original Aaron. Worried that Mari, who is closest to the original girl, is the most likely to be suspicious, she struggles to find an excuse. Mari surprises her by clarifying that she doesn't dislike the new her. In fact, Mari admits she likes how much stronger the young miss has become, but makes her promise not to hide her pain anymore. Touched by Mari's unexpected acceptance and kindness, the girl is left speechless. Mari gives her hands a reassuring squeeze, sealing their new understanding. Feeling energized and determined, the girl happily runs up the grand staircase, clutching the book from Jeffrey. Unfurling a large parchment, she prepares to begin her secret project. She examines the document, realizing they are blueprints for magical tools that will be famous in 10 years, and wonders why Jeffrey would discard them. Realizing Jeffrey threw them out because the materials are rare and the ideas are ahead of their time, she recalls saving them from the trash and forms a plan to commercialize them now to secure her future. She sees this as a backup plan in case Jeffrey doesn't adopt her, but worries that time is running out. Her plans are suddenly disrupted when Jeffrey, dressed for a journey, announces he's leaving and that she can take a break, a departure much sooner than in her past life. Worrying that Jeffrey will be much busier when he returns, she feels the pressure to act quickly. Standing before the imposing figure of an elderly man, she frets over how a 7-year-old can possibly produce and distribute such expensive products alone. Startled by a sudden presence, she turns and asks, "Who is there?" An elderly man with white hair and a stern expression confronts her, demanding to know why she is there. She recognizes him from her past life, noting he looks much healthier now, as he impatiently repeats his question. Panicking, she tentatively greets him as grandfather and wonders how to handle the situation. She identifies herself as Jeffrey's assistant, which surprises the man, who then asks for Jeffrey's whereabouts. When she reveals Jeffrey left for the royal palace, the grandfather's expression darkens. He scowls with intense displeasure, muttering, "That brat." He grumbles about Jeffrey wasting his life in the lab, leaving the girl confused about his animosity. The grandfather suddenly shouts at her, ordering her to deliver a message to Jeffrey. He angrily threatens to kick Jeffrey off the estate if he doesn't change his ways. The girl is utterly horrified by his harsh threat against Jeffrey. Musing that he'll have to take Jeffrey's lab away, the grandfather wonders if the Duke knows about his research with someone named Elfro, leaving the girl stunned. In a panic, she desperately bows and exclaims that his plan can't happen. As a butler informs the grandfather that everything is ready, he pauses to address the girl. The grandfather asks what she's protesting, and she passionately defends Jeffrey, insisting he's not useless and can't be kicked out. She argues that as his assistant, she knows his research will be a great help to the Empire. The grandfather scoffs at her passionate defense with a dismissive "ha." She claims Jeffrey will soon make enough money to be independent, but flinches when the grandfather asks if Jeffrey himself said that. Cornered, she hesitantly confirms his question with a weak "yes." The grandfather's tone turns sharp as he accuses Jeffrey of being stuck in the past, confusing the girl. He angrily warns her that if she's trying to deceive him, she'll be in trouble too, and she nervously agrees. The grandfather thoughtfully considers her words, stroking his chin. He asks what her duties are as Jeffrey's assistant, and she explains she finds and mentally corrects calculation errors in his journal. Surprised she can do mental math, he listens as she proudly proclaims that Jeffrey calls her a genius at calculations. The grandfather and his butler both look down at a document, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. The butler remarks that while reading the magical equations is impressive, solving them mentally is truly amazing. The purple-haired girl listens quietly, taking in the butler's praise. Holding the blueprints, the grandfather looks at the girl and acknowledges that it contains a difficult equation. He asks if she was truly performing these calculations, which she confirms, while the butler questions if Jeffrey taught her. She clarifies that she understood the calculations on her own, that Jeffrey has been teaching her about magical science rituals. The grandfather gestures with the blueprint, asking what she intends to do with it. After she explains Jeffrey said she could use it, the grandfather examines the plans and asks if they are failures from her own research. She denies it, and he then questions if she's simply using the blueprints to study. She looks down for a moment, thinking, before clarifying that her goal is not studying. With a determined sparkle in her eyes, she boldly declares her plan to manufacture and sell the items drawn in the blueprint. Staring at the complex schematics, the grandfather repeats her ambitious plan in disbelief and asks what she's talking about. She clenches her fists excitedly, thinking to herself that the Duke has finally become interested in her proposal. She confidently pitches her idea, insisting that while the items seem unfamiliar now, everyone, including him, will want one in the future. Her eyes shine with conviction as she makes her bold claim. The grandfather smirks, noting the fiery light in her eyes as he questions her claim about creating something everyone will want. Leaning closer, he challenges her, asking if she truly believes her product is so revolutionary, and she eagerly agrees. When he presses her on whether she's confident it will sell well, she gives an enthusiastic and unwavering yes. He looks at her seriously, beginning to lay out the conditions of his potential support for her venture. He states that if her plan succeeds, she will be self-sufficient even if research funding is cut, leaving her speechless. Startled by the unexpected condition, she looks up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. With a confident smile, he declares that if her claims are true, securing funding for her project will be no problem. She panics, realizing she may have just trapped herself, as the butler smiles and confirms his understanding of the grandfather's plan. As she tries to protest, the grandfather cuts her off, stating that he's heard enough and the matter is settled. The grandfather stands with an air of finality, his decision made, while the butler waits patiently beside him. Holding the rolled-up blueprints, the girl lets out a small sound of defeat as he turns his back on her. She clutches the brooch on her dress, wondering if getting her to fund the research herself was the Duke's intention from the start. The scene focuses on her back as she stands alone, contemplating the unexpected outcome of their conversation. In a grand sunlit hall, the butler calls out to his master, the grandfather. The butler asks why the grandfather is leaving when he was supposed to clean the lab, and the grandfather confirms he's aware of the plan. The grandfather dismisses the task, deciding to postpone it until after the annual meeting. The butler smiles knowingly and asks his master for his thoughts. Annoyed, the grandfather asks if he's talking about Jeffrey, then angrily insists he is not. The butler muses about the young master as a cute chibi version of the girl floats beside him. He praises the girl's intelligence and potential, contrasting her current self with the silent child who first arrived at the mansion. In a flashback, a young man with dark purple hair defiantly suggests leaving home if his father opposes him. The young man in the flashback smirks with bitter resolve, seemingly accepting his fate to depart. Back in the present, the grandfather listens silently as the butler continues his analysis. The butler recalls a man who left his family and died, leaving behind a child who was taken in, and wonders how that child could change so drastically. The butler theorizes that Jeffrey discovered her talent, but the grandfather scoffs, calling Jeffrey a fool who can't even care for himself. Clearing his throat, the butler notes the grandfather's sensitivity to Jeffrey's name and suggests the girl's change is simply her true nature emerging. The butler then formally proposes that the girl receive a formal education, just like the other young lords of the house. Holding up a glowing crystalline apple, the butler asserts that the girl's abilities perfectly align with a certain family motto. The grandfather looks worried, but the butler argues that the girl is still too young to be subjected to the official test. Exasperated, the grandfather dismisses the idea, grumbling about what a mere child could possibly accomplish. As they walk away, the butler privately hopes that news of the girl's potential might motivate that brat to get his act together. The grandfather stands tall and imposing as the girl's voice suddenly calls out his title. The purple-haired girl holds up a book with determination, declaring she has something to show him. She walks toward a grand set of doors, thinking that the grandfather's meeting with his retainers should be over by now. Inside, the grandfather is surrounded by his retainers as the girl narrates that he stayed at the castle for a while, likely to prepare for the annual gathering. An opulent, golden hall is shown, described as the location for the Braunot family's annual gathering, a time for presenting achievements and making major decisions. The grandfather signs a document with a quill, as it's explained that decisions made here are binding for a year, making attendance mandatory for all family members. In a hypothetical scene, the grandfather and Harvenix stand with the girl, with the text revealing her adoption into Harvenix's family is expected to be announced at the gathering. The girl lets out a sigh of relief, realizing this period will be busy, just in a different way than before. In a flashback to her past life, she's overwhelmed by stacks of reports for Harvenix, recalling how she used to stay up all night because he only cared about immediate profits. A diagram illustrates Harvenix's flawed business strategy. He has an idea, it fails, he gets angry, and then dumps the problem on his subordinates. Remembering how she was begged to make his failures look like successes, the girl shudders in horror at the memory. She reflects that working with Jeffrey is much smoother, though she remembers his cold instruction to disappear once her work was done. Her thoughts take a dark turn, as she realizes that even the best workplace becomes worthless if it disappears. A cute illustration shows chibi versions of her and Jeffrey sitting together inside a small cardboard box. She panics, imagining the grandfather banishing Jeffrey and ending his research, a scenario she realizes would be irreversible. Clutching her notebook, she acknowledges that while Jeffrey's research wasn't halted in her past life, circumstances are different now, and she must act. With a worried expression, she admits to herself that she isn't entirely sure her plan will work. Shaking with nervousness, she scolds herself for having weak thoughts and being scared before she has even started. Her eyes burn with newfound resolve as she tells herself to stop worrying for no reason. The scene shifts to a luxurious sitting room where several formally dressed people are waiting. A man with light brown hair opens the door and politely invites her to come in. The purple-haired girl stands resolutely in the doorway, holding her sketchbook. A flustered man inside the room is informed by a woman that the young miss has arrived for a visit. The woman clasps her hands together, complimenting the girl on her beautiful dress. As the girl stands quietly, one of the attendees remarks that she seems to resemble him. 3 of the retainers look emotionally touched, thinking about how much the Duke must trust them. The girl offers a bright, cheerful "hello" to the room. An unseen person praises her politeness, leaving the girl looking slightly confused. A man with blondish-brown hair, identified as Viscount Duce, greets her warmly, noting he looks younger than she remembered and asking why she's there. When she says she came to see her grandfather, Viscount Duce, and another man look at her in surprise. Viscount Duce lifts her into his arms, kindly asking if she brought a drawing to show the head of the family. He and his companions speculate that perhaps she wrote a letter to celebrate learning to write. The people around them gush over how adorable granddaughters are and how happy the family head will be, making the girl blush. Viscount Duce smirks, privately thinking how foolish the others are for daydreaming in front of the young miss. He carries the girl toward another door, telling her to come with him. Stopping before an ornate door, he announces that the head of the family is inside. He dramatically throws open the doors, announcing to the room that the young miss has come to see the lord. The grandfather, sitting at a table with his retainers, looks up in irritation and asks what was just said, as the girl realizes she's interrupted a meeting. Startled, the girl bows her head and offers a timid hello. Overwhelmed, she thinks she can't even lift her head, while 2 people behind her whisper about how nervous she must be. A woman explains the girl is there to give the grandfather something, while another notes the sweat on her brow, suggesting she worked hard to time her visit. The grandfather gruffly tells her to come closer. As she approaches his desk, the girl nervously wonders why all the retainers are still lingering in the room. When the grandfather asks what she brought, she proudly declares she has something to show him. The grandfather reflects that he was just angry about Jeffrey and that it's natural for her to be scared, just as she is happily placed on a chair beside him. He asks if he needs to check it now, and she firmly holds out her sketchbook, insisting he does. He takes the book and examines it with a curious, As he holds the sketchbook, the grandfather is surrounded by his curious retainers, and internally grumbles about why they aren't leaving. The retainers make excuses, claiming they're curious about her drawing or writing skills, as the girl looks down demurely. The grandfather dismisses the crowd of onlookers, telling them they have work to do, much to their disappointment. As the retainers shuffle out, the grandfather sighs that it's a shame, but says they can try again next time. Viscount Duce says he'll wait, but the grandfather TSKS at him, annoyed that the Viscount just remembered something he forgot to mention. With a silent, intense gaze, the grandfather contemplates the proposal before him. He holds the notebook, pondering Erin's determined chibi drawing and her written words. A blond man, watching from the side, finds the grandfather's slow, deliberate reading unusual. He wonders if it's a threatening letter, but dismisses the idea, noting the grandfather's expression isn't one of concern. Suddenly, the grandfather bursts into a hearty laugh, startling both the chibi Erin and the blond man. Wiping away a tear of amusement, the grandfather comments on what Erin has brought him, while the blond man watches in confusion. Eager to understand, the blond man asks to see the letter, and the grandfather readily agrees. The blond man begins to read the simple address. To grandfather, he reads Erin's offer. In exchange for staying, Sir Geoffrey's lab and research funds must be protected. Looking at the page filled with childish drawings and the repeated plea, the blond man is taken aback by what he sees. He thoughtfully concludes that this is not a sweet letter from a granddaughter, but a serious business proposal. The blond man imagines the scene, amused by the idea of an empire-leading merchant being pitched by a child. The grandfather takes the proposal back, stating he's seen enough, while the blond man protests that the next page is confidential. The blond man is stunned, marveling at the intriguing colored pencil proposal that even includes a shrewd negotiation tactic. Closing the notebook, the grandfather looks at Erin and admits her proposal is interesting. He tests her, asking about the risk of loss, but Erin confidently asserts that her grandfather would never allow a loss in the first place. In a cute diagram, Erin explains her risk-free plan to reuse materials if the items don't sell, prompting the grandfather to ask about initial costs. The blonde man smiles, impressed by Erin's confident presentation. Clasping her hands together, Erin emphasizes that to achieve her goals, certain steps are necessary. The grandfather listens with a small, impressed smile, clearly intrigued by her logic. She concludes her point, stating that even in the worst-case scenario, the plan would still successfully minimize research expenses. The grandfather realizes, with surprise, that she's not just repeating things she's overheard, she's proposing a genuine deal. Pointing a finger with conviction, Erin declares that her plan is a win-win situation for everyone involved. The grandfather leans forward, seeking clarification on her claim that they will, at worst, break even. Musing on her words, he taps the desk and repeats, "Break even." The grandfather summons his aide, Deuce, who promptly responds. He asks Deuce about their supply of magic stones, and Deuce confirms they have enough for merchant trades to create about 50 magical tools. Turning to a surprised Erin, the grandfather asks if she'd like to try making her proposed item using those stones. Erin gasps in disbelief, asking if he's serious, while a concerned Deuce questions his master's intentions. The grandfather curtly silences Deuce, telling him not to interrupt. He asks for confirmation that the notebook contains her first product idea, and an excited Erin scrambles onto the table to agree. The grandfather announces he'll assign someone to help, and Erin's eyes sparkle with delight. He instructs Deuce to handle distribution once the product is complete, suggesting they use Huangdo's shop for the 50 items. Deuce agrees, but cautiously asks if he should know what he'll be selling first. The grandfather looks toward Erin, explaining that while the product is unfamiliar now, it will soon be something everyone wants. He adds with a smirk that he might even want one for himself, catching Erin by surprise. "All right, let's see it," the grandfather says, and Erin eagerly replies that she's looking forward to it. Beaming with happiness, Erin enthusiastically promises to do her very best. The scene shifts to a grand, sunlit library as Erin mentally cheers her success. A tiny Erin dances with joy, celebrating her huge victory. She reaffirms her plan. All sales money will go to Rafier Nobranta grandfather and she will take none. With the success of her magical tools, she celebrates that she won't be kicked out of the lab. A determined chibi Erin carries a book, knowing that leaving a good impression on customers is paramount. Now, at a desk piled with journals, she decides to review them quickly before Jeffrey returns, planning to dedicate the week to production. Erin studies the documents before her with a focused and serious expression. Holding a handwritten journal entry, she wonders why her work suddenly feels so much more fun than it did yesterday. She muses that getting rid of a burden might be the reason, even though the adoption decision is still pending. As she rereads the document, a sense of wonder washes over her. A gentle, happy smile spreads across her face as she continues to read. In a sunlit library, a woman with light brown hair calls out for Erin, startling a small, confused chibi version of the girl. The purple-haired girl looks up and answers, prompting the woman to express relief at having found her. The woman introduces herself as Alphonse, the librarian, and offers a pleasant greeting to young Lady Erin. Erin internally notes that Alphonse is not the librarian she's seen before, deducing she must have worked there before her time. Deciding to be polite, Erin offers a cheerful hello, and Alphonse warmly greets her in return. When Erin asks if Jeffrey is there, Alphonse clarifies that she came not to see him, but to deliver books he had ordered. Erin looks up at her inquisitively, questioning the mention of books, and Alphonse confirms, gesturing toward them. A cart piled high with books and scrolls is revealed, leaving a chibi Erin wide-eyed in amazement. Alphonse adds that Jeffrey also left a message for her, which piques Erin's curiosity. With a moment of hesitation, Alphonse closes her eyes as she prepares to relay Jeffrey's words. In a stylized vision, a cool-looking Jeffrey suggests she can just toss the books in a corner if she doesn't want them. Alphonse relays his casual message, leaving Erin to quietly question his strange instruction. Looking at the towering stacks, Erin thinks it's an excessive number of books to buy, just to be tossed aside. Her eyes fall upon the pristine condition of the books as she lets out a small "oh" of realization. She gently picks one up, thinking to herself that he even went so far as to prepare brand new books for her. With puffed cheeks, she wonders if this is his way of telling her to study hard, or if he felt guilty about the old books she'd borrowed. Recalling a memory of Jeffrey handing her a book when she was younger, she admits she's unsure of his true intentions. Erin crouches down, beginning to look through her new and unexpected collection. The scene changes to a dark, wet room as a man lets out a tired sigh, his muddy boots splashing in a puddle. He throws his damp coat onto a chaise lounge, lamenting his bad luck with the rain. It's Jeffrey, who stands in his lab and scoffs at the idea that this messy place is the Empire's best research facility. Looking at a shattered purple crystal, he deems it a joke that this is all their research has yielded. He covers his face in frustration, sighing at the disappointing result of his work. Staring at the glowing fragments on his desk, he resigns himself to another fruitless attempt. An unseen man speaks, telling Jeffrey that he completely understands his frustration. In a memory, a brown-haired man comments on the difficulty of analyzing a substance's composition from mere burnt traces. As the man's hand reaches for his head, he suggests to a despondent Jeffrey that the task might be impossible. Back in the present, Jeffrey leans back in his chair with new resolve, stating they must figure it out, and chiding himself for complaining when a child like Erin can spot errors. He thinks of Erin, recalling how her simple observation broke through their stagnant research. He marvels at her resilience, noting that she never seems bored or disheartened despite spending all day in the lab. A fond memory of Erin's excited exclamation for cake flashes through his mind. Resting his hand on the desk, he begins to seriously consider raising her as his apprentice. He paces his lab, planning her future education and deciding to personally teach her before she is old enough to attend an academy. A thoughtful smile forms as he continues to imagine what lies ahead for her. He pictures a future where a slightly older Erin might one day call him Daddy. His daydream continues with an image of her proudly showing him a test with a perfect score. The hopeful vision fades away, leaving Jeffrey standing alone in his dimly lit lab. A promotional page marks a brief pause in the story. The scene shifts to Erin, who is lying in bed reading a book and sighing about how peaceful things have become. A pie chart illustrates her busy daily schedule as she reflects on all the recent events. Content: she thinks that, with Jeffrey's logs complete, all she has to do is finish her book before he returns. Mari suddenly interrupts, asking why she isn't resting, to which a startled Erin replies that she is. With her hands on her hips, Mari scolds her gently, insisting she should be playing in the garden like other children. Erin hesitates, but Mari reminds her she couldn't go outside before because of her fever. Mari gently pulls the reluctant girl to her feet, urging her to get some sunlight. Internally, the maid worries about pushing the 7-year-old too hard, fearing she could fall ill again. The scene transitions to a bright, sunlit room, foreshadowing a change of scenery. Now in a lush garden, Erin stands by a grand fountain and remarks on the nice weather. She breathes in the pleasant scent of flowers, feeling glad she listened to Mari's advice. Her peaceful moment is interrupted as she peeks around a stone urn, her expression turning to one of curiosity. A man in formal attire assures a distressed woman in an elaborate black and red gown that he understands her. The woman, identified as Saria Barano, Havnik's wife, crosses her arms and sternly states she's glad he is aware. The man looks thoughtfully towards Saria, considering the person who was with her. The man bows his head slightly, assuring Saria that he is clear on her instructions and will comply. Saria tells him the money will be enough for a comfortable pass before starting to discuss another matter. Her eyes widen as she sharply turns her head, having suddenly noticed something amiss. The purple-haired girl is caught crouching on the ground after stumbling out of her hiding spot. Thinking quickly, Saria puts the pouch back in the confused man's hand, while loudly thanking him for his sincere teaching of the children. The man humbly insists that her children are simply outstanding on their own, as Saria dismisses him. Sarah watches intently as the man turns and walks away, their secret transaction now disguised. Startled, the girl offers a timid hello as Saria demands to know how long she has been there. The girl innocently claims she was just following a butterfly, an explanation Saria seems to accept. Saria curtly tells her to leave, and the girl obediently turns and walks away. Once at a safe distance, the girl stops, her mind racing as she whispers, "Wow." Her expression hardens with realization as she deduces that Havnik's siblings entered the Royal Academy through bribery. She identifies the man as Hilberg, a former tutor for the Brano family, and is shocked he would help Avalon and Bimel cheat. Remembering how a boy named Avalon was a terrible student, She concludes that bribery is the only way he could have been accepted into the academy. A frustrated chibi version of her wishes, she had a magical recording device to capture evidence of the crime. With newfound resolve, she decides to remember the incident, planning to use the information to her advantage one day. Her scheming is interrupted when the butler finds her in the garden and calls out to the little miss. Aaron runs to greet the butler, who exchanges pleasantries before asking her to accompany him to the head's office. The scene transitions to a lavish study, where the grandfather waits, looking out a large window. The butler escorts Aaron into the room, where she cheerfully greets her grandfather, who welcomes her in. The grandfather holds up a magical tool, explaining that he called her for a midterm review, which confuses Aaron. A closer look reveals the tool is an ornate, ring-shaped device that resembles a high-tech magnifying glass. He confirms the device is the portable hairdryer she designed and asks if she would like to test it. Aaron holds her invention, musing that since hair-drying tools already exist, her product isn't an entirely new concept. She activates the glowing device, confident that its true value will become apparent with long-term use. Her grandfather comments that there seems to be quite a demand for it, leaving Aaron looking puzzled. She is left speechless when he reveals that the first batch of 50 dryers sold out immediately in the capital. The grandfather smiles, remarking on Viscount Duce's excitement about the project, and a thrilled Aaron eagerly agrees. Her eyes shine with pride and excitement over the success of her invention. A diagram explains the drawbacks of traditional hairdryers. They were large, required servants to operate, and were tricky to use without burning hair. In contrast, women are shown happily using the new, convenient device, which quickly became a popular magical tool. Impressed by her success, the grandfather admits he never knew she had a talent for commerce. He clarifies that since the entire stock sold out, the meeting is less of a midterm check-in and more of a final review. When he proposes producing more dryers, Aaron enthusiastically raises a pointer and declares that she likes the idea. The scene changes to Aaron standing beside her grandfather's chair, asking if he called for her, master. She looks up in surprise and recognizes Hilberg, the man from the garden, standing before them. Hilberg enters the office, hoping he isn't too late as he approaches the table where Aaron and her grandfather are sitting. The grandfather assures him his timing is perfect as Hilberg stands at attention before Aaron. Aaron mentally smirks, guessing Hilberg is worried she is tattled, but knows she lacks the evidence to do so. The grandfather introduces Aaron as the child he spoke of, surprising Hilberg, who had assumed it would be a child from a collateral family branch. Praising Aaron's intelligence, the grandfather tasks Hilberg with overseeing her education, confident that she will learn quickly. He then formally introduces Professor Hilberg to Aaron, telling her to greet him. Aaron looks up at her new tutor, thoughtfully considering that he will be guiding her path for the foreseeable future. With a beaming smile, a young girl with light purple hair introduces herself as Aaron Brano. The grandfather laughs heartily, remarking that she has no need to formally learn manners, as his aide looks on. A hand holds a teacup as someone cautions that you never know what the future holds. His aide suggests the little miss might even become the top student at the Imperial Academy, a possibility the grandfather entertains while an excited Aaron listens. The aide looks forward to the parent observation day, but the grandfather says they should focus on the entrance ceremony first. As the grandfather laughs, a completely bewildered Aaron wonders what they are even talking about. The scene shifts to a grand, sunlit mansion. Later that night, in a moonlit office, a blue-haired man named Jeffrey works at a cluttered desk while Aaron stands nearby. Jeffrey expresses his surprise that she finished organizing the journals, and Aaron happily replies that it was fun. She proudly announces she's finished the book he lent her and is ready to study the new one, earning his approval. Aaron somberly informs him that, due to training, she will no longer be able to visit the lab every day. Jeffrey looks up from his work, startled by her sudden announcement. His expression turns serious as he processes the news. An angry aura flares around Jeffrey as he furiously demands to know who is taking his assistant to be trained. The grandfather appears, calling Jeffrey an impudent fool, while a shocked Aaron watches the confrontation begin. The grandfather glares, clearly agitated and flustered by the challenge. Jeffrey tells the grandfather he should relearn his manners, but the grandfather retorts that a child needs education, not to be used as an assistant. Jeffrey argues that people might think they are locking her up and forcing her to work, much to the grandfather's exasperation. Turning to the grandfather, Aaron questions if he wasn't the one who left a 7-year-old child to work alone in the lab. Pointing angrily at Jeffrey, the grandfather declares he's done raising useless people and orders him to go home. As the stunned Aaron stands in silence, Jeffrey wonders what he should do about this escalating situation. Erin reflects that she followed them out without thinking. The grandfather asks if the late Duke Raphael resented Jeffrey, but Jeffrey ignores him, insisting he will handle Erin's career path himself. Jeffrey looks defiantly at the grandfather, stating he refuses to listen to his stubbornness. As the grandfather shouts that he won't let Jeffrey have his way, a worried Erin thinks that this is bad. The two men face off in a tense, silent standoff. Caught between their imposing shadows, a frightened Erin begins to stammer. She clenches her fists, determined not to stay silent as things will only get worse. Tightly closing her eyes, she nervously asks if she can't do both studying and assisting. Jeffrey argues that he can't quit being her assistant, nor can he miss the chance to be recognized by the Duke, as the grandfather listens intently. A chibi Erin is shown trapped on a swing between Jeffrey and the grandfather, illustrating her fear of being cut off from one of them. The grandfather declares he will send her to the academy to study, but Jeffrey argues that she is still just a child. Jeffrey proposes she receive education from the family for now, insisting he is aware of her abilities. Erin chimes in that she knows her abilities too, but trails off uncertainly. Both men turn and shout at her to stay quiet, causing her to flinch. A butler with a monocle approaches and politely asks for a moment of the little miss's time. Erin looks up at him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. The argument rages on, with Jeffrey declaring his responsibility for Erin and the grandfather, telling him to take responsibility for himself first. As dark, angry energy fills the room, a terrified Erin is overwhelmed by their conflict. The butler with the monocle sees her distress and comforts her with a gentle touch. The argument halts as both men and the butler see Erin has broken down into tears. Crying, she apologizes profusely, saying she was wrong, leaving the two men stunned. The grandfather covers his mouth, thinking that this situation has become very bad. Jeffrey gently touches the crying girl's cheek and apologizes. In the now quiet office, Jeffrey watches over a silent, downcast Erin. He offers her a glass of juice, telling her it will help calm her down. As she accepts the drink, she thinks that it's becoming harder to control her emotions now that she's a child. She looks at the glass, surprised that she would cry so much just from watching adults fight. Jeffrey watches her with a look of deep concern and regret. Covering his face with his hand, he apologizes for scaring her while she sits quietly nearby. As a tearful Erin calls out to him, Jeffrey gently reassures her that he wasn't angry with her and that she doesn't need to worry. Erin quietly agrees, looking down at a piece of paper as Jeffrey watches her. Jeffrey looks on with a thoughtful expression. He tells her to look at what he brought, and a curious Erin looks down. Jeffrey holds out a large, heavy box as he asks what it is. Peeking from behind him, Erin mentally scoffs, assuming he's bragging about work from the palace and thinking he only understands research. Her eyes widen in astonishment at what she sees. The box is filled to the brim with a beautiful assortment of cookies, candies, and other sweets. Jeffrey stands over her, sheepishly admitting that he couldn't buy much. Looking down with a slight blush, Erin listens as he explains that he didn't have much time. Jeffrey maintains a stern, yet slightly flustered expression. He gently pats her head as she sits at a table now covered in treats, and she gives an enthusiastic, "Yes!" Erin reaches for a jar of sweets, wondering aloud which one she should try first. Taking a bite of a cookie, she asks him to tell her what happened. Jeffrey starts to ask how she met her grandfather, but quickly dismisses the question as irrelevant. Erin looks up at Jeffrey, a heart-shaped cookie in her hand. She asks why he's suddenly bringing up Harvenic, questioning his reason for asking. Jeffrey explains he heard they're producing a product from her blueprint, recalling how Viscount Deuce praised the invention while he looked on, confused. He continues, wondering if Harvenic dislikes the commercialization of his blueprint, leaving Erin to ponder the question. Erin brightly explains she got curious after seeing the blueprint, and her grandfather agreed to help, leaving a stunned Jeffrey speechless. When Jeffrey asks if turning the blueprints into products was her idea, she proudly confirms it and declares her intent to commercialize the others as well. Jeffrey questions if it's okay, but Erin simply replies that since the blueprints are his, the decision is up to him. A charming chibi drawing shows Jeffrey and Erin sitting together at the table. Jeffrey reveals he registered all the patent rights in his name, prompting a surprised Erin to question what patent rights are. In a diagram, Erin confidently explains that Jeffrey will earn future royalties from the sales of his magic tool, ensuring long-term profit. Pointing a finger at her, Jeffrey asks who told her to do all this, just as she finishes her explanation by crediting her grandfather. Erin states she wanted the patent to clarify Jeffrey's ownership, but confesses her true motive was to create an income stream in case the lab was shut down. She concludes that Jeffrey can now just focus on his research, content with her solution. Jeffrey covers his face and sighs that she's hard to understand, while Erin happily enjoys her sweet, noting how it melts in her mouth. The narration reveals that her wishes were granted, and the scene transitions to an empty, elegant room. Erin explains she can now study at the estate and be Jeffrey's assistant, a decision mediated by the butler between a reluctant Jeffrey and a sighing grandfather. A hand pats Erin's head as a voice advises her to think about the future slowly. The narrator explains that although Jeffrey seemed displeased, he felt it was too early for her to attend an academy. A cute daydream shows Erin vowing to be number one, while Jeffrey insists she report everything she learns at the academy back to him. Someone adjusts the bow on Erin's uniform, telling the young lady to return safely. Mari cautions Erin to be careful and to tell her teacher if she falls. Dressed in a new uniform with a backpack, Erin happily announces she started attending the academy with the family's private tutor. An overhead view shows the grand classroom as the narration explains that most students are direct descendants of the family. As Erin enters the classroom, she learns that talented children from collateral branches are also sometimes allowed to attend. Deciding to get along with her new classmates, Erin approaches an empty seat, wondering if she can sit there. She offers a cheerful hello to the room, her bright eyes taking in the scene. A smiling boy with red hair turns to her, asking if she's the direct descendant they've been hearing about. Shielding her eyes from the glare, Erin offers a shy hello as the boy approaches. Standing before the red-haired boy, Erin notes that it has been a month since she first arrived at the castle. She suddenly recognizes him, exclaiming, "Fettelman," as she processes who is standing before her. A flash forward depicts an older, decorated Fettelman, highlighting his future importance within the Empire. Erin introduces herself as a 7-year-old, and Fettelman politely greets her in return. The two children stand in silence for a moment, sizing each other up. Fettelman's friendly demeanor vanishes as he glances toward the door, announcing that, quote, "They're here." Two purple-haired boys burst into the room, with the one in front angrily yelling at another student to move out of his way. One of the purple-haired twins glares back at Erin and Fettelman, clearly annoyed by their presence. The narrative introduces a timid, bespectacled boy named Nux Bronaut, noting he is famous for a different reason than Fettelman. A formal declaration reveals that Nix is destined to become the court magician of the Imperial Palace. This story explains that mages, like Jeffrey, are magical scientists who use mana stones to perform their roles. A small chibi Erin reflects on why mages have always been treated as precious within the Etner Empire. The illustration of a powerful, robed mage floating amidst magical energy continues the explanation. The scene cuts back to the classroom, where the purple-haired twins are bullying Nux, making Erin realize the future court magician is being tormented. Erin observes, thinking Nux's father, Modali Brano, would be furious and worrying that the boy will lose his spirit before achieving his destiny. Fettelman intervenes, standing protectively beside Erin as he tells the twins to stop because Nux is clearly in pain. The twins shout back that it's none of his business, leaving Fettelman and Erin to watch in silence from across the room. One of the twins cruelly pulls on Nux's cheeks while the other calls him scum. Fettelman asks Erin if she knows the twins, and she confirms it. He dismisses them as beneath his level, while she scoffs at their arrogance. Suddenly, one of the twins violently shoves Erin to the ground, yelling that she's in his spot. As Fettelman rushes to her side, the smirking twin looks down on Erin, who glares back from the floor, furious. A brown-haired woman, likely an aide, enters the classroom and greets the children. The commotion stops as all the children, including Fettelman and the aggressive twin, turn their attention to the woman. The twin demands to know why she's there, and she announces that Lord Hilberg has an issue, so today's lesson is postponed. Smiling, she assigns them the task of finishing a book by the next day. As Fettelman helps her up, Erin grumbles internally about having to read another boring book. The woman's expression becomes serious as she silently observes the children. Fettelman decides to leave, telling the woman it wasn't a big deal, but Erin mentally criticizes him for casually dismissing the incident. She reasons that Fettelman's actions are smart, knowing a powerless servant can't stand up to noble children. Erin concludes that only an adult with power, or another member of the Bronaut family, can solve the bullying problem. Ignoring the turmoil, One twin excitedly tells his brother they should go horseback riding, causing the terrified Nukes to flinch. Seizing the opportunity, Aaron hops onto a chair with a book, loudly offering to pass them out to the class. As another student asks for a book, the twins stare silently at Aaron, one looking particularly unimpressed. The aggressive twin calls Aaron an interloper and yells at her to get lost, since there is no class. He stalks toward her, angrily questioning if she thinks she owns the place. Getting right in her face, he shouts that the room is for the family's children, but Aaron doesn't back down. With her hands on her hips, Aaron stares up defiantly at the fuming boy. The twin scoffs in frustration, puffing out his cheeks as he warns her, "Just wait!" A feline version of Aaron thinks she'll bite him if he touches her again, just as Fiedelman advises him not to cause trouble. Eftelman turns his attention to Nukes, showing him the book they read last time and jogging his memory. The scene transitions, following the brown-haired aide as she walks down a long, elegant corridor. An advertisement for the comics website and Discord server is displayed. A man with dark purple hair, Havnik, stands in a stately room and tells the unseen visitor to come in. The aide from the classroom enters, and Havnik immediately demands to know why she is so late. She explains that Mr. Hilberg asked her to deliver a book to the academy, causing a brief delay. As the aide stands nervously, Havnik begins to question her. He holds up a sheaf of papers, asking why her hands are empty and demanding to know where the journal is. She informs him that Sir Geoffrey no longer works in the library and has moved all his materials to his study, surprising Havnik. The aide adds that this change occurred shortly after Geoffrey took on Lady Aaron as his assistant. Havnik scoffs, questioning what a child like Aaron could possibly do to assist Geoffrey. He slams his hand on the desk, demanding the truth, but the aide insists she is hesitant, only because he might not believe her. "That's up to me to judge," Havnik declares, his glare intensifying. The aide reveals that Lady Aaron is responsible for finding errors in Sir Geoffrey's journal, which makes Havnik question if a small child is capable of such a task. She explains that Aaron mentally solves complex formulas that even top scholars struggle with, leaving Havnik to exhale in thought. Havnik contemplates this, wondering if this is the work of the genius Geoffrey he's heard about. He then internally questions why any father would send such a gifted child to the academy. His expression darkens with rage as he trembles, remembering the abominable thing that was done to his son, Abelon. A woman with light pink hair asks a man with dark hair to investigate why his father has suddenly taken an interest in a certain girl. The man glares intensely at the woman, questioning her, while she looks back defiantly, asking what he means. A chibi drawing captures the man's simmering irritation. The man, Havnik, reveals that Geoffrey's invention became a profitable product, attributing the idea to that brazen kid, and asks the woman if she truly believes that. Havnik questions how the product design, which she claimed was hers, was taken away. She admits she thought stealing it would be easy. He scoffs at the idea of anyone wanting a useless invention, while she regrets not securing a proper contract and wonders why Geoffrey would give away his legacy. Havnik dismisses the idea of legacy since the girl isn't Geoffrey's child, but the woman insists this only makes the situation more suspicious. He sits in contemplative silence, realizing there must be a grander scheme at play that they are not privy to. The woman speculates there was a deal between Geoffrey and the father, with the girl as a mere excuse, which sends Havnik into a quiet rage. Havnik explodes, slamming the desk and yelling at her to stop distracting him, but she retorts, calling him a dunce for doing nothing. Offended at being called a dunce, he glares as she sighs and clarifies she wasn't talking about him. She grabs his tie, pulling him close as she urges him to focus on their stressful situation and figure out a plan. Tightening her grip, she warns him that while his father and Geoffrey may seem at odds now, they could easily join forces later. Lost in thought, Havnik dismisses the idea of them plotting against him. He concludes that the brat must be useful, which is why his father and Geoffrey fought over her, recalling a memory of them arguing over baby Aaron. His hand clenches into a fist as he considers the implications of his father caring so much for the little girl. The scene shifts back to Havnik dismissing the brown-haired aide, who looks back in confusion. He angrily tells her to leave but to return when he calls for her, and she nervously agrees. As she stands by the door, Havnik adds one more instruction. He demands that she bring him a copy of Geoffrey's journal the next time she is summoned. With a final warning to be prepared, he stares her down as she stands in silent, grim acceptance. The aide walks down a long, ornate hallway, letting out a weary sigh. Leaning against the doorway, she laments getting caught in a tiresome situation, only to be startled by a voice from within, welcoming her. She enters to find F. Delman, Nukes, and Aaron holding books, and she asks if they need anything. A stern Jeffrey appears, startling the aide as he questions why she was away from her post during work hours. Jeffrey, wearing his spectacles with a chain, holds a book and looks at her disapprovingly. Flustered, the aide says she didn't expect him there, while the children explain they had asked him to help them get some books. Nukes explains they came to exchange Empire History 1 inch for the second volume, prompting the aide to realize Mr. Hilberg likely wants Aaron to review the first book. The aide understands the situation as Fidelman sheepishly scratches his head. Aaron proudly declares she's fine because she has already read all the books. A chibi Aaron explains the book is from a pile Jeffrey gave her, which are all far too advanced for her age. Nukes and Fidelman are stunned, admitting the book was so difficult it made them sleepy, while Aaron privately thinks it was just fun. Jeffrey remains silent, observing the aide with a neutral expression. He tells Aaron that he's handled the problem, and she is now free to go play with her friends, leaving her momentarily surprised. The aide watches the exchange, her expression showing surprise as well. In a cute chibi panel, Jeffrey tells Aaron to meet him in his study later. Aaron happily agrees and rushes off with her friends, leaving Jeffrey alone with the aide in the library. Jeffrey asks the aide about her trip to the academy, inquiring if Aaron is adjusting well and getting along with the other children. The aide suggests a particular boy was likely bothering Aaron again, which visibly annoys Jeffrey. Jeffrey instructs the aide to monitor Abalon and see if he continues to bother Aaron at the academy. His eyes glowing, Jeffrey commands her to report any and all instances of bullying directly to him, leaving the aide intimidated. The aide internally panics at the thought of running background checks for Jeffrey while also reporting to Havnik, feeling overwhelmed by their competing demands. Feeling like a double agent, the aide forces a smile and agrees to his request. The three children happily run down a hall, with Fodelman challenging Aaron to a race to the classroom as Nuke struggles to keep up. A hand closes a plaid-lined suitcase with a decisive click. Aaron asks Fidelman if he's finished packing, and he confirms he's ready to go. Nukes cautiously peeks into the classroom from the doorway. He turns back and reassures the others that Abalon isn't in the classroom. Evelyn readily agrees to enter, while Aaron remains silent and thoughtful. Eftelman turns to Aaron and asks if she's scared of Abalon, catching her off guard with the question. Fidelman recalls how Abalon was threatening Aaron earlier, noting that despite the confrontation, she doesn't seem bothered at all. As Fidelman dismisses the incident, Aaron looks at him and silently questions his casual, no-big-deal attitude. Walking away, a thoughtful Fidelman calls Aaron truly amazing. He elaborates, telling Aaron he's impressed that even though she's younger, she stood up to Abalon and didn't even flinch when he tried to hit her. Nukes quietly admits that in the same situation, he's too scared to say a single word. Aaron asks Nukes why he doesn't tell his parents about the bullying, but he looks away, saying he doesn't want to. When she presses him for a reason, Nukes clutches his backpack straps, looking down in silent distress. Nukes explains that his competent father, Modali, works on a huge ship and deals with scary people, and he admires how his dad always speaks his mind. Standing alone under a spotlight, Nukes confesses he can't tell his father about the bullying because he's afraid of being seen as a disgrace. Aaron listens quietly, internally acknowledging that she understands how Nukes feels. A chibi Aaron concentrates, deep in thought as she formulates a plan. Turning to her friends, Aaron brightly announces she's going to teach them something good. She leans in and whispers a shocking secret to the boys. Abalon and Bimel still wet the bed. Fathelman covers his mouth in stunned disbelief, asking if she's serious, and Aaron confidently confirms she overheard Lady Saria talking about it. Aaron boldly lies, claiming the twins don't mess with her because she caught them, though she privately admits the story is only half true. She promises Nukes that if he can't stand up to the bullies, she will, and if they persist, she'll just smack them. Aaron offers a sweet and reassuring smile, her eyes closed in genuine warmth. Nukes looks at her, his eyes shining with hope and gratitude. With a kind gesture, Aaron extends her hand to Nukes in a sign of their new alliance. A blushing Nukes looks down, touched by her offer of friendship and protection. Eftelman happily asks to join their pact, and Aaron welcomes him with a cheerful, "Sure." A cat-eared Aaron skips along, pleased that her day was so productive. She stops abruptly, her expression turning to one of mild confusion. Peeking through a window, she sees two men walking outside and wonders who they are. From a balcony, she watches the men below, getting a better look. A jolt of lightning-like shock runs through her as she recognizes one of the men. She panics, realizing with dread that an important visitor is already at the estate. Watching them head for her grandfather's office, she realizes she hasn't prepared anything for their meeting. With no time to spare, Erin dashes down the corridor in a full sprint. She bursts through the office door, frantically shouting for her grandfather. In her haste, she runs headfirst into a man's leg with a soft thud. Thump. The impact sends her tumbling backward onto the floor. A man's hand reaches down to her as he asks if she's all right, and she peeks up at him. She finds herself looking up at a large, flamboyantly dressed man with a white hat and a golden lip piercing, who smiles down at her. Realizing she's too late, Erin sees Nukes' father, Modeline, and another man already in the room. The kneeling man asks if she's Erin. Her grandfather calmly asks what the rush is, flanked by Modeline and another blonde-haired man. As Modeline begins to ask about the child, the grandfather introduces her as Erin, the girl he mentioned before. Nukes' father, Modeline Bruano, looks down at Erin and acknowledges her presence. The grandfather summons Erin to come closer, and she promptly agrees. He asks if she just got back from the education center, and she looks up at him with wide, attentive eyes. Citing his guests, the grandfather kindly asks Erin to wait outside for a bit. Erin surprises her grandfather by asking if she can stay and listen in on the meeting. Clasping her hands together, she eagerly promises not to be a disturbance if she's allowed to stay. The blonde man, Viscount Deus, supports her request, suggesting it would be a valuable experience and that she might even offer a great idea. With a charming wink, Viscount Deus directly asks Lady Erin for her opinion. Erin internally praises Viscount Deus for his clever move, while her grandfather thoughtfully considers the idea. The man in the white hat, Trunette, agrees that he doesn't mind her staying, prompting the grandfather to grant his permission. Modeline reluctantly agrees that her presence is fine, as long as she remains quiet. Erin observes Modeline, thinking that despite his words, it's obvious he doesn't want her there. The grandfather internally resolves that while he'd prefer to ignore Harvenic's schemes, he must intervene to prevent massive losses, recalling the name of Harvenic's man, Trunette. A narration box explains that Trunette once conned Harvenic in a massive scam, showing a flashback of the two men. Erin recalls that the Bruano family suffered an unforgettable financial hit because of Trunette's scam. A chibi Erin, accompanied by a tiny revenge-plotting cat, clenches her hands, resentful that she willingly passed on a fortune. She internally vows that she won't let the guilds lose their massive fortunes to a swindler like Trunette. Standing firm, Erin clenches her fists with determination. Back in the meeting, the grandfather confirms that Trunette is a representative of the Pelpat Guild, which Trunette affirms. Trunette smiles confidently, placing a hand over his heart. The grandfather asks about the Pelpat Guild's focus on international trade, and Trunette clarifies they exclusively handle high-end luxury goods. A variety of luxury items are shown, including rare tapestries, a vase, and a handbag. Trunette boasts about their inventory of fine art and bespoke goods as the grandfather listens intently, his fingers steepled. Finding the speech too long-winded, Erin thinks about how Trunette was brought in by a man named Kaison. The grandfather interrupts Trunette's monologue to get to the point. He asks if Trunette is proposing they import and distribute luxury goods, and Trunette enthusiastically confirms it. The grandfather questions why they are needed, pointing out that Trunette's guild seems capable of handling it alone. Trunette humbly explains that his guild prospers outside the empire and lacks knowledge of its internal workings. Modeline interjects, asking if Trunette wants them to handle distribution within the empire. Growing frustrated, Modeline asks what Trunette's guild will contribute if they're handling both distribution and logistics, prompting Trunette to warn him to watch his words. Viscount Deus calmly states he's just curious, pointing out that Trunette doesn't manufacture the goods and their own guild already handles procurement. Trunette defensively reminds them of the importance of brand value when dealing with luxury goods. Viscount Deus gently pats Erin's head, urging everyone to calm down and remember they aren't there to quarrel. Modeline expresses concerns about the risks of counterfeiting, but Viscount Deus argues that they must embrace some risk to focus on quality. As Modeline and Viscount Deus stare each other down, an image of a hawk and a cat fighting appears between them. Trunette turns his attention back to the grandfather, who seems deep in thought. Trunette smoothly asks for the grandfather's trust in his guild. He confidently questions who would dare circulate counterfeit goods against the Coke Guild, making Erin internally marvel at the smooth talker. The grandfather announces they will deliberate on the proposal, causing a stunned Modeline to question his father's decision. The grandfather reassures Trunette that the proposal will be reviewed positively, promising an answer before he leaves. As they exit, Harvenic approaches Trunette, asking him not to be offended and promising to explain the contract to his father himself. Trunet smiles, stating he never doubted the contract would go through, as Harvenick forces a strained smile. Trunet adds that the Duke would surely not reject a venture led by his eldest son, causing a chibi Harvenick to flinch in annoyance. Trunet pressures Harvenick by noting the goods' high value means he can't wait indefinitely, prompting Harvenick to ask if he's suggesting a deposit. Trunet confirms a deposit would provide security for both sides, and Harvenick nervously asks for the amount. Harvenick's eyes widen in disbelief. 10 million gold? He shouts in shock. But Trunet calmly tells him not to be so surprised. Trunet justifies the substantial deposit by reminding him they are luxury items, and Harvenick reluctantly concedes the point. Placing a hand on his arm, Trunet tells Harvenick to take his time, as the matter isn't urgent. Harvenick internally panics, realizing Jeffrey's schematics have been taken, his mines are failing, and his performance has been abysmal. In a dark moment of dread, he concludes that backing out now would utterly destroy his reputation. Resolved, Harvenick looks out the window and agrees to prepare the deposit as quickly as possible. The scene shifts to a desk covered in notes and scrolls, where someone is deep in thought. Aaron studies a document, thinking that Trunet is likely discussing the deposit with Harvenick right now. As Jeffrey walks past carrying a box, Aaron resolves that she must block the main contract to minimize their losses, even if the deposit is unavoidable. Jeffrey startles her by asking why she looks so serious, and she lies, claiming to be thinking about new product development. She internally despairs, feeling none of her ideas can stop Trunet and wishing for a truth-telling magic tool. Jeffrey looks at her thoughtfully, his spectacles reflecting the light. He wisely suggests that the best approach is to first eliminate the least useful options from her plans. Aaron admits that everything looks useless to her, then quickly grabs a document from the pile, catching his attention. She points to a diagram of a winged scepter and asks him what it is. Jeffrey explains it was just a side project to use up a formula, showing an illustration of chickens holding the scepters. He dismisses its commercial value, but as Aaron examines the schematic, she notices a crucial detail. Its label reads Gender Identifier. Jeffrey looks down, wondering if the scepter is truly as useless as he thought. Pointing at him, Aaron explains that while she hasn't tested it for that purpose, she thinks it's probably impossible. As chibi versions of them ponder, Jeffrey explains that making the device recognize an egg as a chicken would be quite difficult. He concedes it might be able to differentiate between eggs, and a pensive Aaron absorbs this new information. A jolt of inspiration strikes Aaron as a brilliant idea forms in her mind. Jeffrey, she calls out excitedly, asking him to explain the schematic in more detail. The scene briefly shifts, preparing for a new development in the ongoing business affair. In the grandfather's office, a man slaps a clipboard on the desk, declaring that the risks of the deal are far too great. The man with his back to the viewer dismisses Trunet's smooth words, questioning what the Pelpot Guild will contribute if they do nothing. Viscount Deus points out the Pelpot Guild's international success, but Modeling counters that those markets are flooded with indistinguishable counterfeits. Modeling insists that to protect the Code Guild's credibility, there can be no counterfeits, prompting a thoughtful from the grandfather. Aaron peeks into the office, asking if they're busy, and her grandfather acknowledges her arrival. He warmly asks if she's come to see him again, and she happily runs over to greet him. She cryptically admits that seeing him is only one of her reasons for visiting, piquing his curiosity. Meanwhile, Harvenick walks with Trunet, noting that since he was summoned again so quickly, he hopes they will finally sign the contract today, a sentiment Trunet happily agrees with. Harvenick bursts into the office with a wide grin, cheerfully announcing his arrival to his father. The room falls silent as Harvenick enters, finding Aaron seated with her grandfather and the other men. Harvenick glares, annoyed by Aaron's presence, as the grandfather calmly welcomes him. The grandfather closes his eyes with a satisfied smile, ready to proceed with the meeting. Trunet announces he is there to suggest a broader timeline for the deal, which surprises the grandfather. Sipping his tea, the grandfather states plainly that he has no desire to rush things. Trunet sets his cup down, questioning how they can proceed without trust, and then asking how they should build it. A smiling Aaron steps forward, radiating a bright and innocent energy. Trunet greets her warmly, recognizing her as the little lady he met the day before. He asks what delightful thoughts she has for him today, a phrase she internally repeats with skepticism. Aaron politely asks Trunet if he has any product samples, and he confirms with some surprise that he does. She asks him to leave some, revealing their plan to develop a magic tool to verify his goods, leaving Trunette utterly stunned. With her hands clasped, Erin cheerfully confirms she's suggesting they create an authenticity checker. She excitedly announces they will adapt a known formula to create a, quote, counterfeit detector specifically for his merchandise. Dropping the bombshell, Erin declares that the renowned inventor Jeffrey will personally handle the tool's development, shocking Trunette. Jeffrey! Trunette exclaims in disbelief as Erin watches his reaction. Erin inwardly notes that Trunette knows how reliable Jeffrey's inventions are, as he nervously uses a communication device. Harvenick questions the sudden inclusion of Jeffrey, recalling his supposed disinterest in business. With a smug smile, Viscount Deus explains that Jeffrey has been working with Erin and was intrigued by her idea. The grandfather kneels to affectionately pat a giggling Erin's head, showing his approval. Trunette nervously asks if the tool is already complete, but the grandfather clarifies that while the blueprints are ready, production hasn't started. Sweating, Trunette tries to save face by agreeing it's a wise precaution, then turns to make a hasty exit. As Trunette begins to walk away, Harvenick shouts for him to stop. Harvenick angrily confronts him, demanding to know why he's proceeding without proper consultation. He demands to know why Trunette had no samples despite having a full wagon, but Trunette dismissively states those goods were unworthy of the Coke Guild. Harvenick is taken aback by Trunette's sudden arrogance and complete change in attitude. Grabbing Trunette's shoulder, Harvenick panics, suspecting Trunette may take the deal to a rival guild. He reasons that the Pelpet Guild must have plenty of other partners, cementing his fear. Changing his tune, Harvenick tries to placate the man, but Trunette coldly addresses him as Lord Harvenick. Trunette asks him why he's suddenly in a hurry, reminding him that he'd said the matter wasn't urgent the day before. Harvenick backpedals, claiming sooner is better, prompting Trunette to suggest an initial deposit would help him prepare better samples. Visibly relieved, Harvenick places a hand over his chest, glad to have a path forward. Elsewhere, a woman seated at her vanity shouts at Harvenick, asking how he expects to find that much money immediately. Harvenick desperately pleads with the brown-haired woman, asking her to get the deposit from her father or her own savings, lamenting the enormous sum. The brown-haired woman reminds Harvenick they already spent a fortune on Avalon's Academy admission, so Harvenick suggests asking her father-in-law for the money. She slams her hand on the vanity, angrily shouting at his nonsensical suggestion. She furiously asks when a daughter of the esteemed Koch family has ever had to beg their in-laws for money. Harvenick tries to reassure her that the deal will solve everything, but she cynically asks if he realizes how often he's made that same promise. He nervously insists it will work this time and begs her to trust him, though his inner thoughts betray his terror of losing his father's favor. Turning her back on him, she coldly states that it's not her fault. Harvenick bitterly thinks that his father refuses to support any of his efforts, yet hangs on every word from that brat. As Harvenick runs a hand through his hair in frustration, the woman asks if he's referring to Erin, and he confirms it. He continues his tirade, complaining that Erin is confidently creating a counterfeit detector with Jeffrey and clearly enjoying herself. The woman falls silent, thoughtfully wondering if Jeffrey is truly getting involved in business matters again. Harvenick grabs her, insisting they can't let this slide, and she agrees that they must put Erin and Jeffrey in their place. He clarifies his intent. They don't need to confront them, but to separate them, a suggestion that puzzles her. He warns that if Jeffrey continues to interfere, they must prepare for the worst, causing her to grip a piece of furniture in understanding. Holding a candle with a determined smile, the woman resolves to take that child away from Jeffrey. The scene shifts to Erin telling Jeffrey that someone said he was making a fake detector, and he calmly asks if that's so. Jeffrey gently pats Erin's head, saying he's glad our conversation with the others went well. He offers to bring out snacks and tells her to sit down, an offer she accepts with an excited yes. A brief transitional shot shows her small hand gripping the back of a chair. She calls out his name, Jeffrey Nim, getting his attention. Still holding the chair, Erin asks if he isn't curious about her plans for the fake detector. Jeffrey, focused on his work, replies that as long as the magic tool satisfies her curiosity, he doesn't mind its purpose. Erin is visibly surprised by his nonchalant answer. She looks down, a hint of disappointment on her face. Her thoughts drift, wondering if his attitude is intentionally vague. Jeffrey changes the subject, asking about her lessons, and she explains she's been studying on her own since her teacher is still busy. She inwardly expresses her curiosity about her new tutor, Hilberg, and hopes lessons begin soon, but Jeffrey bluntly states there isn't much for her to learn. He advises her to simply think of the lessons as a way to relax, and she cheerfully agrees. A paper is set on the desk, as Erin's inner voice agrees that he's right. Sitting before a large stack of books, she concludes that making connections with the other students is more important than the lessons themselves. She ponders which of the returning students she should talk to once Hilberg comes back. While writing, she reminds herself to keep an eye on Hilberg for any misdeeds and to track the profits from her magic tools. Her eyes blink heavily as she decides it's time to return to her room. A huge yawn escapes her as drowsiness takes over. She apologizes for yawning, but Jeffrey reassures her that it's perfectly normal for someone her age to feel sleepy. He gently suggests she go upstairs for a nap, promising to wake her in a little while. A soft sigh escapes as she sleeps peacefully under the covers. The camera lingers on her serene, sleeping face. Later, Jeffrey is surprised to find the grandfather in the darkened room and asks why he is there. The older man simply says he came to talk. The grandfather's expression is stern and unyielding in the dim light. He states that their discussion is important and they should go inside, a command that causes Erin to snap awake in her bed upstairs. As the two men enter the study, the grandfather asks where Erin is, and Jeffrey tells him she's asleep. An alert Erin wonders what he's here to discuss. The grandfather clarifies that his business is with Jeffrey, not the child, as a nervous Erin peeks from her room. Jeffrey sighs, agreeing to get the conversation over with, stating he has no time for small talk. Unable to bear the suspense, Erin decides to go downstairs and pretend she just woke up. She sits up in bed, her expression filled with worry and apprehension. The grandfather announces his plan to declare Erin's adoption at the next annual meeting, causing her to gasp in hopeful shock, believing Jeffrey will finally raise her. However, Jeffrey stares back at the grandfather and firmly promises to make sure that doesn't happen. Peeking through the railing, Erin is utterly stunned and confused by his unexpected rejection. She questions her understanding of the situation, wondering if this was ever about Jeffrey adopting her at all. The grandfather looks at Jeffrey with his stern expression, questioning if the adoption was all he came to discuss. Walking away toward his cluttered desk, Jeffrey reiterates that he will handle Erin's situation and take full responsibility for her. The grandfather steps forward, asking if Jeffrey truly intends to just leave her in this unresolved state. Jeffrey turns back slightly, arguing that Erin is at an age where she needs proper parental care and can't continue living like this. Challenging his son, the grandfather asks who he plans to have adopt her if he genuinely cares so much. The grandfather admits that he has already been looking into potential candidates on his own, as he suggests that the only suitable candidate from the direct line would be Jeffrey's brother. A shocked Erin overhears from the stairs. Jeffrey confronts his father, angrily questioning the logic of suggesting Harvenick for the adoption, while also claiming to care for the child's well-being, though he concedes Harvenick is trying to leave the household. The grandfather slams his hand down, accusing Jeffrey of having wasted the past 2 years of his life. Jeffrey counters, asking if the current situation is preferable to Harvenick's adoption and if his father has considered it might be the right path for Erin. Scoffing at Jeffrey's words, the grandfather dismisses the idea of maintaining the current state of affairs. Jeffrey lands a heavy blow, asking his father if he would still be saying such things if Erin were his deceased daughter, Viola, leaving the old man speechless. Still listening in, Erin recalls that Viola was the name of Jeffrey's daughter. The grandfather, looking pained, tells Jeffrey that true care requires more than just empty words of responsibility. Jeffrey coldly accuses his father of treating Erin with the same neglectful mindset he had for Viola. Reeling from the accusation, the grandfather calls it a mere assumption, but Jeffrey furiously retorts that he wishes it were. The grandfather lashes out, stating that everyone in the Buono household knows Jeffrey has been hiding in his lab, clinging to the ghosts of his wife and daughter. He continues his tirade, calling it tiresome to watch Jeffrey waste time searching for a culprit that doesn't exist. Jeffrey stands with his head bowed, absorbing the harsh words in silence. From the railing above, a worried Erin watches the tense confrontation unfold. She panics internally, realizing that if this continues, all of her carefully laid plans will have been for nothing. Her gasp gives her away, and both Jeffrey and the grandfather look up to see her standing on the landing. Seeing that her grandfather has noticed her, Erin feigns confusion as he remarks that the noise must have woken her. Now downstairs, Erin approaches the grandfather and asks if he's here about the counterfeit detector, which he confirms with a curious smile. A cute chibi panel shows the grandfather asking for a greeting, and Erin shyly agreeing. Peeking over the railing again, she watches the two men below with a thoughtful expression. Jeffrey remains in the background, his expression unreadable as he stands by his desk. Letting out a weary sigh, the grandfather seems worn down by the argument, Erin walks up to her grandfather and asks if he's tired, but as he kneels before her, he gently denies it. Smiling warmly, he thanks Erin, telling her she's the only one who ever worries about him. Touched by his words, Erin looks up at him with wide, emotional eyes. Clasping her hands nervously, she calls out his name, and he responds kindly. The two share a quiet moment, the grandfather sitting as Erin stands before him. A promotional image for the Scanlation team is displayed. A recruitment and information panel for the Scanlation team is shown. The quiet moment between Erin and her grandfather continues as she hesitates to speak. Patting her head gently, the grandfather surmises that she must have overheard their conversation while she was sleeping. He reassures a worried Erin that they aren't sending her away. They're trying to find a way to keep her close for even longer. Despite his assurances that she can always visit the lab, a chibi Erin internally despairs at the thought of being adopted by Harvenic. Erin mentally cycles through her options, telling them directly, or having someone named Raphael confront Harvenic. Her thoughts grow darker as she considers forcing an apology or even killing them, before quickly dismissing the last idea as suicidal. Back in reality, Erin struggles to find the words to express her feelings to her grandfather. He cuts to the heart of the matter, asking if her hesitation is because she doesn't like Harvenic, causing her to flinch. Waving her hands in denial, Erin quickly insists that it's not that she dislikes him. She explains her real reason. Abalon and Vimel, Harvenic's sons, don't like her. The grandfather recalls the two boys' boisterous nature and immediately understands, muttering that those brothers are definitely a problem. He offers a new solution, asking her how she would feel about staying with Jeffrey instead. Erin's eyes light up with joy, and she eagerly lists the reasons she'd love to stay with Sir Jeffrey, mentioning the snacks and books he gives her. She internally decides against mentioning the blueprints and money he provided, wanting to sound more like a normal child as she thinks of other reasons to give. In a hazy flashback, a younger-looking grandfather gently pats the head of a crying, downcast Erin. Erin looks away, her expression somber and her eyes tinged with sadness. Closing her eyes, she remembers how his touch once felt warm, like sunshine. Back in the present, a solemn Erin stands still, her fists clenched at her sides. The grandfather gazes down at a trembling Erin, his expression softening with kindness. He offers her a gentle, reassuring smile. The grandfather promises to do his best to find her a comfortable place to live, telling her she can trust him. Sometime later, Erin rests under a tree, musing that the peaceful days have continued while the Duke looks for adoption options. Her quiet moment is interrupted when Fidelman, the red-haired boy, approaches and asks what she's doing. Erin shows him her book, The Principles of Management, which he dismisses with disgust. Eftelman comments that the book looks incredibly difficult, but Erin, sitting with Nukes, insists it's fascinating. Nukes agrees that it seems difficult, but Erin chides him for judging it without even reading it. Nukes' eyes widen in recognition as he exclaims that he's seen his dad reading that same book. Erin is delighted, thinking that since Modali reads it so often, he must know his stuff, feeling a strange sense of kinship. Nukes suggests to Erin that she and his dad would probably get along well. A memory of her past life surfaces. She didn't talk much with Modali then, but she's sure they could communicate now. Looking at Nukes, she realizes that befriending his father would be a win, as it would also let her get closer to Nukes. Nukes excitedly agrees, realizing that if she befriends his dad, he can play with her more often. Beaming with happiness, Nukes clenches his fists and declares he'd like that very much. Confused by Nukes' sudden good mood, Fidelman wonders if he should read the book too. In a chibi thought bubble, a blue-haired girl reminds him he just called it difficult, while Nukes tells Perdal he doesn't have to force himself. Sitting by the tree, a pensive Erin looks on in confusion. The scene shifts as Erin runs into a grand room to greet her grandfather, who welcomes her back and asks if she's tired from helping Jeffrey in the lab. She cheerfully explains she went from the academy to the lab and insists it isn't tiring because she learns so much. Her mood shifts to worry as she wonders if her busy grandfather has called her to discuss the adoption. Relieved, she learns he wants to give her a gift for helping him so much, realizing it wasn't about adoption after all. He explains that saving the lab only helps Jeffrey, so he wants to give her something she wants, leaving her to ponder the offer. Erin weighs her options, deciding that asking to be adopted by Jeffrey would be too hasty, while Jules might be useful but feel impersonal. She stands silently, unable to come up with a suitable request. The grandfather chuckles, correctly guessing she can't think of anything at the moment. Sitting across the table from him, Erin is told to take her time, and she exclaims that her grandfather is the best. TSK, TSK. The butler with the monocle enters the room, addressing the grandfather as Master. The butler reports that preparations are complete, but the grandfather tells him to wait a moment. The grandfather asks Erin to sit and wait, and she happily agrees. While waiting, Erin peeks over the desk at the stack of papers. Her eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the documents before her. She realizes it's the ledger for Harvenik's failed mine, remembering how the numbers were doctored to inflate the profits. Erin thinks that while Trunette's down payment is a sunk cost, they should be able to stop the deal from proceeding any further. She falls silent, a thoughtful, calculating look crossing her face. A spark of an idea hits her as she realizes she could use this information to prevent Harvenik from adopting her. A narration explains that Harvenik passed off his failing Chadwick diamond mine to cover his own business losses. After a year of nothing but losses, Harvenik decided to manipulate the books to hide the truth from rough Erin. Erin remembers her first task in her past life was cleaning up that very same sloppy bookkeeping. She recalls her newbie days, when Harvenik told her to just gloss over the numbers, which she did out of fear of being fired. She surmises that Harvenik planned to slip the fraudulent report by Raphael during the busy annual meeting. This timing would allow Harvenik to avoid immediate accountability and proper punishment. Staring at the ledger, Erin realizes that waiting until after the meeting is too late. With a determined glare, she resolves to find solid evidence before the meeting to prove Harvenik is unfit to be a parent. Sitting back, she knows her first step is to find the real, undoctored account books. A pair of hands carefully sifts through aged documents, searching for the truth. Startled, Erin suddenly has a realization. She remembers the ledger, the book recording all financial transactions. She recalls it's the ledger Harvenik wrote himself and realizes she could use it at the annual meeting. The grandfather calls for Erin, who answers him from nearby. Peeking over a desk, Erin agrees when the grandfather suggests it's time for dinner. When Erin offers to go back to her room, the grandfather trails off, reconsidering. She looks up at him with wide, curious eyes. She gasps in awe at the sight of a magnificent chandelier. A tiny Erin hurries to keep up as the grandfather leads her down a grand hall. Harvenik spots them and calls out to his father, surprised to see them. Harvenik and Syria greet the grandfather, and Erin is shocked to realize he invited them to dinner with her. Syria explains they came early, as an invitation from him is a rare occasion. Syria turns her attention to Erin, who looks up at her nervously. Syria notes Erin's unexpected presence, and the grandfather explains he brought her along since they were already together. Syria offers to call for Avalon and Vimel, but the grandfather pauses thoughtfully. Declining her offer, the grandfather states he has urgent matters to discuss, prompting a startled reaction from Erin. Her fears are confirmed. She realizes the Duke is still considering Harvenik for the adoption. She concludes he wouldn't have invited them to dinner otherwise. Panicked, she clenches her fist, thinking she isn't prepared for this development. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a man with purple hair and glasses. Erin recognizes Jeffrey, while Harvenik inwardly fumes at his casual, late arrival. The grandfather sternly questions Jeffrey about why he is only now showing up. Jeffrey retorts coolly that he only came because his assistant insisted. As Harvenik seethes with anger, Syria quietly urges him to calm down. The grandfather sighs in exasperation, wondering why Jeffrey and Harvenik are always at each other's throats. Seeing Jeffrey seated, Erin realizes with surprise that he came because of her. An elegant dinner is served, with beautifully arranged plates of food. The grandfather gestures for everyone, including two blue-haired twin boys, to begin eating before the food gets cold. Too nervous to eat, Erin worries the Duke will judge her for picking at her food, while Jeffrey silently observes her. A hand places a plate of neatly sliced steak in front of her, catching her by surprise. Jeffrey, having cut the food for her, tells her it should be easier to eat, and she thanks him. She takes a bite and finds it delicious, feeling a sense of relief as Jeffrey watches. The grandfather breaks the silence, asking Harvenik for an update on the Felpot Guild. Harvenik reports that they are preparing samples after receiving a reduced advance payment, which surprises the grandfather. Harvenik justifies the advance by explaining the high competition for the deal, and the grandfather seems to accept his reasoning. Getting his father's attention, Harvenik prepares to introduce a new topic. He announces that with staff and land secured, it is time to begin their new project. Jeffrey thinks they had agreed the research institute was premature, but Harvenik insists to his father that now is the perfect time. Harvenik proposes bringing Erin into the institute as an apprentice, which makes the grandfather pause. He argues that the institute could better utilize Erin's talents and quickly monetize Jeffrey's designs. As Harvenik suggests Erin could learn management there, Jeffrey's hand tightens in silent fury. Erin realizes with horror that Harvinek plans to steal Jeffrey's designs and take her as well. As Harvinek presses to open the institute immediately, the grandfather cuts him off with a sharp gesture. He firmly states that they must first settle Aaron's living arrangements, startling her. The grandfather confirms he means adoption and announces his plan to find her parents at the annual meeting, leaving Aaron devastated. As a dejected Aaron stares at her plate, Jeffrey turns to her with a look of stunned silence. Syria raises her hand, asking her father-in-law to wait a moment. She questions the term, potential parents, asking if he is considering candidates other than them to adopt Aaron. The grandfather calmly sips his wine, holding their gaze without answering immediately. He explains that if she is adopted by a collateral branch, she would no longer be able to live in the duchy. The grandfather explains he'd prefer the direct line adopt Aaron, but his words trail off as a man with dark blue hair and a woman with light brown hair listen intently. The man with dark blue hair beams, declaring they would be delighted, while the woman beside him wonders how they could possibly turn down such a blessing. Clutching her dress in her lap, a shocked Aaron silently processes this unexpected turn of events. She remembers the grandfather's kind words, promising he'd choose the place where she'd be most comfortable. Slumped in her chair, a dejected Aaron realizes she may have to use her promised gift to refuse the arrangement. As the grandfather announces he's thinking of recommending the Modali family, Aaron looks up, stunned. Her eyes widen in disbelief as Modali watches her from across the table. The grandfather explains his confidence in Modali, citing his trusted position as a key member of their merchant guild. A memory surfaces of a family having tea together, showing Modali, his wife, Nukes, and another man. The memory focuses on Modali's wife and Nukes, as it's explained that Modali's son is Aaron's age and seemed pleased at the idea of her joining their family. Remembering Nukes' beaming face, Aaron finally understands his earlier excitement. Her expression softens with comprehension. Startled by a sudden bang, Surya flinches as Harvinek slams his hand on the table, questioning his father's decision to consider other candidates at the annual meeting. Surya smoothly interjects, reminding the grandfather of his preference for the direct line, and urging him to entrust Aaron to them quickly to stabilize her situation. Turning to Jeffrey, Surya suggests that taking Aaron in sooner would be beneficial for his research. With a sharp jab, Jeffrey stabs his steak, causing Surya to flinch in surprise. The grandfather dismisses Jeffrey's potential input, noting he never participates in family affairs, while Jeffrey remains silent. Looking over the entire dinner party, the grandfather states that Harvinek already has 2 children and that he is giving both sides time to think things over. He then turns to Aaron, telling her to think carefully as well, and she stammers her agreement. As he declares the matter will be settled at the annual meeting, Aaron stares down at her plate in despair. Jeffrey observes the scene in silence, his expression thoughtful. Aaron and Jeffrey sit quietly at the table, a vase of white tulips between them. Later that night, a determined Aaron holds a pen under her nose, realizing the situation has escalated. On her notepad, she reviews her crudely drawn options: an angry Harvinek A, a dizzy Jeffrey B, and a neutral Modali C, noting Modali is now the second best option. She fondly recalls a memory of making flower crowns with a happy Nukes. A chibi illustration shows Modali and Harvinek clashing, reminding her of their constant arguments. Pondering her choices, she concludes that siding with Modali means making a powerful enemy of Harvinek. Visualizing herself as a tiny chess piece before Modali, she weighs his significant contributions to the Merchant Guild. She continues to sketch out her thoughts, analyzing her potential guardians. She remembers a kind image of Modali patting her head while Nukes stands by his side. Her thoughts then drift to a pensive Jeffrey sitting at the dinner table. Making a decision, she declares her primary goal is simply to avoid Harvinek, not necessarily to be adopted by Jeffrey. With a decisive stroke of her pen, she crosses out the drawing of Jeffrey, abandoning the plan to be adopted by him. She looks down at her notes, deep in thought. Stopping suddenly, she pauses to reconsider, wondering if it's time to look at the bigger picture. She draws a new, happier face for Plan C, recognizing that Modali's feud with Harvinek is a double-edged sword. She recalls the uncertain positions of the men involved, knowing Jeffrey has yet to make his stance clear. Realizing the Duke still favors Harvinek, she resolves to prepare so thoroughly that Plan A becomes unthinkable. The image of Jeffrey is now framed within a triangle, signifying a complex variable. Sighing, Aaron stares at her notepad, feeling the weight of her decision. Deciding there's nothing more to be done tonight, she resolves to go to sleep. Tossing and turning, she finds she can't sleep, her mind preoccupied with the thought of the ledger. Sitting up, she tries to recall the moment in her past life when she must have received that ledger. She closes her eyes, focusing on a memory of what Harvenick told her. In a flashback, her past self questions keeping something so important nearby, but Harvenick dismisses the concern, saying it would be a disaster if it were stolen from there. As Harvenick's silhouette walks toward a door, he tells her to follow him to the academy, leading her to realize he met someone there who now holds the ledger. A jolt of realization hits her as she sits bolt upright in bed, exclaiming, "The academy!" Leaning forward with wide, determined eyes, she grasps her blanket, a plan forming. She remembers the person who gave Harvenick the ledger was someone who had been at the academy for a long time. A clear image of a smiling Hilberg holding a book comes to mind, and she realizes he must be the one with the ledger. A promotional image features a woman with long black hair and red eyes, set against a dark, elegant backdrop. In a classroom, a smiling man with graying brown hair, Hilberg, asks his students if they understand the lesson. The boy with glasses, Nukes, whispers the name Efdamin to the red-haired boy beside him, who looks back in confusion. As Aaron writes with a sour expression, someone wonders why she looks so bad, and a chibi Fettelman agrees, wanting to know too. She puzzles over a high-quality leather book, unable to place it as her memory is vague. Contemplating the possibility of a misunderstanding, she decides she must reason through it again while studying the text. Kablam! An angry voice roars from off-screen, demanding to know where someone has been. A man with dark purple hair stands in a trashed room, frustrated that an item he's sure was in his desk is now missing. He furiously kicks a desk, demanding to know why there's no policy against fraud. With a menacing glare, the dark purple-haired man clenches his fist and vows to kill whoever is caught. In a library, a woman with light brown braided hair wonders why a particular book is on the shelf. She holds up the ornate red book, which is bound with leather straps and a golden medallion. Confused, she notes the book is unlike any new acquisitions and lacks a title, author, or classification table. Wondering who wrote it, she accidentally drops the heavy book with a thud. Upon closer inspection, she realizes it's not a book, but a handwritten household account book. Flipping through the pages, she sees entries for deposits and contracts, concluding it must be a ledger written by a family member. Covering her mouth in shock, she stares at the ledger, wondering what she's just discovered. Elsewhere, Erin lies defeated on the floor by her desk, lamenting that she couldn't find the ledger in the end. A diagram of the estate shows the difficulty of running errands, and a pie chart identifies Hilberg as an employee, distinct from the students. As Hilberg stands with the ledger, Erin rests her head on her desk, concluding it makes the most sense for him to have it, but now she has no other leads. At her desk, Erin is asked to greet some newcomers and looks up from her chair, puzzled. 3 maids in uniform stand before her, ready to serve. A brown-haired maid named Lisa and a gray-haired maid named Ash introduce themselves, while a blue-haired maid also offers her greetings. Erin asks Mari who the new people are, and Mari explains the Duke hired more maids to serve her. Mari emotionally thanks the Duke, explaining she was able to spend an hour with her peers, much to a chibi Erin's confusion. Erin tries to dismiss them, saying she'll be fine reading alone, but the 3 maids look concerned. The brown-haired maid insists their job is to care for the baby, while Erin replies that she doesn't need anything right now. Mari suggests a walk outside, but the other maids seem eager to play instead. The maids eagerly offer to play hide-and-seek or look at flower rings, but Erin internally rejects their ideas, needing to plan her playtime carefully. The 3 maids peer at her intensely, their expressions suggesting they won't back down until she agrees. "No," Erin declares, quickly grabbing a book and running off, promising to be back soon, while the maids call after her in surprise. Mari watches her go, explaining to the others that Erin barely talks to people, and she herself has only just started socializing with her peers. The brown-haired maid, Lisa, thinks to herself that she used the excuse of an annual meeting to come play with the baby, knowing Erin would have sent her back otherwise. Lisa rallies the other maids, stating their role is important and they must listen to Aggie's every request and report back thoroughly so Mari can rest. Now in the library, Erin is approached by the librarian, Alphonse, who asks if she's looking for a specific book, but she claims she's just going to sit and read. Alphonse says he'll be at his desk and tells her to let him know if she needs anything, and Erin agrees as he walks away. Alone now, Erin holds the book and wonders with dread why Alione has the secret plan ledger.